There is a moment that happens in relationships far more often than men realize, yet almost nobody talks about it openly. A woman quietly changes the entire emotional story of the relationship inside her mind long before the relationship officially ends. She begins imagining life without you, rehearsing conversations that never happen out loud, emotionally preparing herself to leave while still sitting beside you every day. The frightening part is that most men never notice any of it happening. Everything appears normal on the surface until suddenly the connection feels distant, colder, harder to reach. Then one day she leaves, and he is left staring at his phone wondering when everything changed. What causes this shift is rarely one dramatic mistake. More often it comes from emotional needs that were never recognized in the first place. Researchers studying communication in romantic relationships discovered that many women secretly wanted specific behaviors from their partners, but never directly expressed those desires. Not because they were unimportant, but because explaining them would make the emotional meaning feel forced rather than genuine. This is what many men fail to understand. Women often attach emotional value to things that feel instinctive, natural, and voluntarily offered. When those emotional needs remain unnoticed for too long, disappointment quietly builds beneath the relationship, without arguments, warnings, or obvious conflict, until emotional distance slowly replaces emotional intimacy. Many men assume that if something truly matters to a woman, she will simply say it directly. From a logical perspective, that seems reasonable. If there is a problem, discuss it. If there is a need, communicate it clearly. But emotional psychology does not always operate through logic alone. For many women, having to request certain forms of affection, attention, or emotional reassurance can completely remove the emotional impact behind them. What she truly wants is not only the action itself, but the feeling that you noticed her emotional state without needing instructions. This is why so many women quietly suppress certain desires instead of verbalizing them. Society often teaches women to avoid appearing needy, demanding, emotional, or overly dependent. Over time, they learn to hide those needs behind independence and self-control. On the outside, she may appear calm, capable, and emotionally composed, but internally she still longs for emotional reassurance, comfort, protection, and intentional affection from the man she loves. The dangerous part is that silence can easily be misunderstood. A man may think everything is fine because she is not complaining, while she slowly feels less emotionally connected each day. Resentment does not always explode loudly. Sometimes it grows quietly through disappointment that was never spoken aloud. Understanding this changes relationships completely because it teaches you to pay attention to emotional signals instead of waiting only for verbal requests. Emotional awareness often matters more than perfect communication alone. One of the strongest emotional desires many women secretly carry appears during moments when their mind becomes overwhelmed. Every woman experiences periods where her thoughts spiral endlessly. It may begin with stress from work, tension within her family, an argument with a friend, or a single careless comment that keeps replaying inside her head long after everyone else has forgotten it. While she appears quiet on the outside, internally her mind is moving rapidly from one anxious thought to another without rest. Most men respond to this by trying to solve the problem immediately. They offer advice, practical solutions, or logical explanations because they genuinely want to help. But in many of these moments, what she craves is not a strategy, it is emotional grounding. She wants to feel emotionally safe enough to stop carrying everything alone for a few minutes. Sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is simply close the emotional distance without turning the moment into a discussion. Holding her gently, kissing her forehead, or pulling her close without demanding explanations communicates something deeper than advice ever could. It tells her she does not need to perform strength every second around you. Physical reassurance creates emotional calmness because trusted touch has a direct effect on the nervous system. More importantly, it makes comfort feel real and tangible. When a woman feels emotionally safe in your presence during stressful moments, her connection to you deepens in ways words alone rarely accomplish. Another thing many women secretly long for is hearing their actual name spoken with emotional intention. Most men rely heavily on generic pet names because they feel affectionate and familiar. Words like babe, baby, or sweetheart become automatic in relationships. While those names can feel warm, they are also interchangeable. Almost every woman has been called those same names before. Her actual name, however, carries a completely different emotional weight because it belongs only to her. Psychologically, hearing your own name activates parts of the brain connected to identity, self-awareness, and emotional recognition. This becomes even more powerful when the name is spoken by someone you are emotionally attracted to. A woman notices when a man naturally says her name during quiet conversations, emotional moments, or moments of closeness, because it makes her feel personally seen instead of generally desired. The impact is not limited to intimacy alone. It can happen during ordinary moments as well. Saying her name while telling a story, asking her a question, or simply getting her attention creates subtle emotional intimacy. It communicates that she exists clearly in your emotional world, not just as a role in your life, but as an individual person you deeply notice. What makes this powerful is that it feels instinctive rather than rehearsed. Women do not want forced romantic techniques. They want emotional authenticity. When her name comes naturally from you during meaningful moments, it creates emotional intensity that generic affection rarely matches. One emotional dynamic many women quietly pay attention to is how a man responds when another man shows interest in her. This situation reveals far more about emotional confidence than most men realize. Women are not looking for explosive jealousy, public confrontation, or possessive behavior that feels aggressive and unstable. In fact, reactions like that often create emotional discomfort rather than attraction. But complete emotional indifference can also create distance because it may feel like a lack of emotional investment. What many women secretly desire is calm, protective energy. They want to feel that the man they are with notices what is happening, remains emotionally composed, and subtly communicates confidence without losing control of himself. This kind of grounded response creates emotional security because it shows both confidence and care at the same time. A simple gesture can communicate this powerfully. A hand resting calmly on her lower back, stepping closer beside her, maintaining relaxed eye contact, or smoothly redirecting the interaction without tension sends a strong emotional signal. It communicates awareness without insecurity and confidence without hostility. Women instinctively observe how emotionally stable a man remains under subtle social pressure. If he becomes reactive and angry, she feels tension. If he becomes emotionally detached and passive, she may feel emotionally unprotected. But when he stays calm, confident, and emotionally grounded, she experiences something different. She feels chosen without feeling controlled, protected without feeling trapped, and emotionally valued without unnecessary drama. That emotional balance becomes deeply attractive because it reflects both maturity and confidence simultaneously. One of the most emotionally powerful things a man can do in a relationship is quietly remove pressure from a woman's life without being asked. Most women carry an invisible mental workload that often goes completely unnoticed. Beyond obvious responsibilities, there are endless small details constantly running through her mind. Appointments, errands, schedules, unfinished tasks, emotional responsibilities, household planning, remembering important dates, and managing countless little problems before they grow larger. Even when she appears relaxed, part of her mind is usually still organizing life in the background. What many women secretly crave is not grand romance in those moments, it is relief. Emotional relief, mental relief. The feeling that someone else noticed something needed attention and handled it without requiring instructions or supervision. The emotional impact of this is far deeper than the task itself. Fixing something around the house, taking care of errands, preparing something for her in advance, or solving a small problem quietly communicates emotional awareness. It tells her she is not carrying the relationship alone. More importantly, it allows her nervous system to rest for a moment. Women rarely ask directly for this because explaining every task often feels more exhausting than simply doing it themselves. The magic comes from initiative. When a man notices details without being told, attraction often grows naturally because she feels emotionally supported instead of emotionally responsible for everything. That support creates a sense of peace many women silently crave but struggle to verbalize openly. One of the quietest ways relationships begin falling apart is when emotional pursuit slowly disappears after commitment is established. During the beginning stages of attraction, many men naturally put in effort without hesitation. They send thoughtful messages, plan meaningful dates, compliment her sincerely, and make her feel intentionally chosen. Every interaction carries emotional energy because he is actively trying to win her heart. The problem begins when comfort slowly transforms into complacency. Many men assume that once the relationship becomes secure, the emotional work is finished. Without realizing it, they stop doing the very things that originally created attraction in the first place. The attention becomes less intentional, the effort becomes routine, and the relationship slowly shifts from emotional excitement into emotional maintenance. A woman notices this change far earlier than most men realize. What many women secretly want is to continue feeling pursued even after they already belong to you emotionally. Not through dramatic gestures every day, but through consistent reminders that you still choose her intentionally. A thoughtful message, planned time together, spontaneous affection, or sincere attention communicates emotional investment far more deeply than automatic routine ever can. Women rarely ask directly for renewed pursuit because it can feel emotionally vulnerable or desperate to admit. Instead, they often grow quieter, less expressive, or emotionally distant over time. The dangerous part is that emotional disconnection usually happens gradually, not suddenly. Relationships survive when both people continue choosing each other actively, instead of assuming love can sustain itself without emotional effort. Another thing many women deeply crave, but rarely hear in a meaningful way, is specific verbal desire. Most men believe simply telling a woman she is beautiful is enough. While compliments like that are appreciated, they often become repetitive because they are broad and expected. What creates a stronger emotional reaction is when attraction feels personal, detailed, and emotionally undeniable rather than generic. Women want to feel that a man notices the small things about them that nobody else pays attention to. The way she laughs when she becomes nervous, the expression she makes while concentrating, the tone in her voice when she is excited, or the tiny habits that make her feel uniquely herself. These observations create emotional intensity because they show focused attention instead of surface-level attraction. Specific desire also feels more believable psychologically. Instead of hearing general praise she has heard many times before, she hears evidence that her presence genuinely affects you emotionally. That emotional honesty creates a much deeper impact than rehearsed compliments ever could. What makes this even more powerful is emotional intensity delivered calmly. Women are deeply affected when a man expresses attraction in a way that feels sincere, slightly vulnerable, and emotionally unfiltered. Not exaggerated performance, but authentic emotional reaction. When she senses that her presence genuinely disrupts your focus or stays on your mind long after she leaves, she feels emotionally desired rather than casually admired. Women rarely ask for this directly because true desire loses meaning when it feels requested. They want it to emerge naturally from genuine emotional overwhelm and honest attention. One of the strongest forms of attraction operates completely outside of words. It happens through confident, calm, physical guidance. Many women secretly love when a man naturally moves them through space with quiet certainty and protective awareness. Not aggressively, not forcefully, and never in a controlling way, but with grounded confidence that feels instinctive and emotionally safe at the same time. Simple actions create a surprisingly powerful emotional effect. A hand placed gently on her waist while guiding her through a crowded room, moving her to the safer side of the sidewalk, pulling her closer while crossing the street, or guiding her through a doorway without hesitation, can create intense emotional attraction. These moments communicate confidence physically rather than verbally. The psychology behind this is deeply connected to emotional security and presence. Women instinctively notice whether a man feels comfortable leading calmly in real-world situations. Physical guidance signals decisiveness, awareness, and emotional certainty without needing to announce any of it aloud. What makes this so powerful is that it feels natural instead of performative. There is no long speech, no attempt to impress, and no forced dominance. It is simply grounded masculine presence expressed physically in small moments. Women rarely ask for this because it sounds difficult to explain directly, but emotionally many are deeply drawn toward men who create a feeling of safety, direction, and calm confidence through subtle physical actions. Those moments stay in her memory because they make attraction feel real, immediate, and emotionally physical all at once. At the center of all these hidden desires is one simple truth most men completely overlook. Women are not only responding to actions themselves, they are responding to the emotional meaning behind those actions. What makes these moments powerful is not perfection, expensive gestures, or rehearsed techniques. It is the feeling that a man noticed her emotionally, without needing constant instruction or explanation. That feeling creates emotional intimacy in a way logic alone never can. A man who understands this stops approaching relationships mechanically. He begins paying attention to emotional energy, subtle changes in mood, silent stress, unspoken needs, and the small moments where connection can either deepen or slowly disappear. He realizes that attraction is maintained through consistent emotional awareness, not temporary excitement. The strongest relationships are rarely built through dramatic moments alone. They are built through repeated experiences of feeling emotionally safe, emotionally desired, emotionally supported, and emotionally chosen over time. When a woman feels those things consistently, she naturally becomes more open, affectionate, loyal, and emotionally connected, because she trusts the emotional environment around you. Most women will never openly explain all of these desires, because many of them lose emotional impact once they become requested obligations. That is why emotional awareness matters so much. The men who pay attention quietly often become the men women never emotionally forget. Do well to subscribe because you are important.